He called her
To
ugly
my son
and
and his
left her while she
beautiful
was
bride,
giving
may
birth
your
to
life
twin
together be
girls.
filled with love,
5 years later,
joy,
she
and endless
slapped him and
happiness.
married a billionaire. Hi, my beautiful family. It's your Mr. Peter. If this is your first time here, I don't just welcome you. I open my heart to you. This isn't just a channel. It's a place for healing, love, and stories that carry soul. You belong here, truly, deeply, always. Before we begin, let me offer you a prayer. Not just words, but love in motion. I pray that peace softly fills the places inside you where pain has lived too long. May love come to you in quiet, lasting ways, through the kindness of a stranger, the warmth of a memory, or a whisper from heaven when you feel alone. I pray that your burdens grow lighter, your heart grows softer, and your strength returns. And for every soul serving and protecting others, whether in uniform, in sacrifice, or in silence, may you be wrapped in grace, remembered in prayer, and guarded by angels wherever you stand. Now, my beautiful family, lately, many of you have been leaving the story halfway. And yes, I feel it. These stories aren't just entertainment. They are a piece of me. When you walk away, it's like the story never had a chance to reach your heart. And some of you have said James doesn't sound like me. You're right. He's not me. But he's carrying my heart with care, trying to hold this family together while I recover. If he's not connecting with you, just say so. But please don't go quiet and vanish. That silence cuts deeper than you know. Please stay till the end. Every line, every moment, is written for you. And when it's over, let me feel you. Rate the story out of 10. Leave a kind comment and tell me your city or country. Let's remind the world that this family, our family, is real, present, and full of heart. Let's begin with all my love, always.
They say a woman never forgets the moment she becomes a mother. What they don't tell you is that sometimes, on the same day you give life, someone you trust can shatter your world completely. Julie Torres stared at the empty chair beside her hospital bed, her heart splintering with each crushing contraction. 18 hours of labor, 18 hours of checking the clock and wondering where her husband could possibly be. 18 hours of nurses asking, "Where's Daddy?" with increasingly sympathetic glances. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead like angry insects, casting sterile shadows across the delivery room. Julie's wedding ring pressed into her palm as she gripped the bed rails, the small diamond that had once promised forever now feeling like mockery against her swollen finger. "Where is he?" she whispered to the empty room, her voice barely audible above the steady beep of monitors, tracking two precious heartbeats inside her. Terence Clayton, her husband of 2 years, the man who'd promised to love her through sickness and health, through better and worse, was nowhere to be found on what should have been the most important day of their lives. Margaret, the night nurse, approached with the practiced compassion of someone who'd witnessed countless births. Her silver hair was pulled back neatly, and her eyes held the kind of warmth that made frightened people want to confess their deepest fears. "Honey, let's focus on these beautiful babies," Margaret said gently, checking Julie's IV. "Sometimes fathers get overwhelmed by the reality of delivery. He'll come around." But Julie knew better. The warning signs had been growing like poison in their marriage for months. Terrence's increasingly late nights at the office, reeking of cheap perfume and whiskey. His growing irritation whenever she mentioned the babies, his constant complaints about money, about how 2 kids will destroy everything we've built. This morning, when her water broke in their cramped apartment kitchen, she'd called him with shaking hands, expecting concern, excitement, love. Instead, his voice had been flat, almost hostile. "Already? Christ, Julie, couldn't this wait until after my client meeting? I'm about to close the Morrison deal." "Terrence, I don't think babies wait for real estate deals," she'd managed between contractions, but the line had already gone dead. Now, as another wave of pain crashed over her, Julie understood with devastating clarity that she was completely, utterly alone. The fairy tale she'd believed in, the future she'd planned, was crumbling like old paper in her hands. "Mrs. Torres, it's time," Dr. Martinez announced, positioning herself with professional efficiency. "I can see the first baby's head. You're going to need to push with everything you have." Julie closed her eyes and summoned strength from depths she didn't know existed. If Terence wasn't here to witness their children's arrival, then she would be strong enough for all three of them. She bore down with primal force that seemed to come from her very soul, her body surrendering to the ancient rhythm of birth. 26 minutes later, baby Jenna entered the world with a cry that pierced through Julie's exhaustion like sunlight through storm clouds. The nurse placed the squirming, perfect little girl on Julie's chest, and for one transcendent moment, nothing else existed except this miracle she'd created. "She's absolutely beautiful," Margaret whispered, tears in her own eyes. "Look at that precious face." Jenna was indeed perfect. Tiny rosebud lips, a delicate button nose, and the most incredible dark eyes that seemed to look directly into Julie's soul. Love flooded through Julie with an intensity that made every previous understanding of the word seem shallow. "Hello, baby girl," Julie breathed, touching Jenna's impossibly soft cheek. "I'm your mama, and I promise you I will never, ever leave you. Never." 17 minutes later, Tamara made her entrance with equal determination, smaller than her sister, but with a voice that declared her intention to be heard. 2 daughters. 2 perfect, healthy daughters who would never know the ache of being unwanted if Julie had anything to say about it. As the nurses cleaned and weighed the babies, Julie found herself staring at the doorway with desperate hope. Surely now Terence would arrive. Surely he wouldn't miss meeting his daughters. But the minutes ticked by with only the soft sounds of newborn cries and medical equipment humming in the background. It was nearly 10 p.m. when the door finally opened. Julie's heart leaped, then immediately plummeted as she took in Terence's appearance. His sandy brown hair was disheveled, his tie askew, and the smell of alcohol preceded him into the room like a toxic cloud. "So," he said, not moving toward the bed, not asking about her or the babies. "It's finally over. Terence," Julie's voice cracked with exhaustion and desperate hope, "come meet your daughters. They're incredible. Jenna and Tamara, just like we planned." But instead of the joy she'd expected, Terence's face twisted with something ugly and cold. His pale blue eyes, once charming, now looked distant and cruel as they swept over her disheveled appearance, the babies in their bassinet, the chaos of new motherhood. "Look at you," he said, his voice filled with disgust that hit Julie like a physical blow. "You look absolutely terrible. Your hair's a mess, you're all swollen and gross. I can barely recognize the woman I married." Julie felt the world tilt on its axis. "Terence, I just gave birth. To your children. Our children." "My children?" He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Julie, let's be brutally honest here. Look at yourself. Really look. You're ugly now. Used up. Worthless. What man would want this?" He gestured at her with obvious revulsion. "No one could ever love someone like you." The words hit her like bullets, each one finding its mark in her already fragile heart. Julie felt something inside her break, not just crack, but shatter completely. The man she'd loved, the man she'd built her life around, was destroying her with the casual cruelty of someone disposing of trash. "You don't mean that," she whispered, but even as she said it, she could see in his eyes that he absolutely did. Terence reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a manila envelope. "Actually, I do mean it, and I've made it official." He tossed the papers onto her bed with the same care he might show for garbage. "Divorce papers. Already filed. My lawyer says I can get out of child support since you probably can't prove they're mine anyway." Julie stared at the papers, the legal language blurring through her tears. "You're leaving me? Today? The day our daughters were born. I'm 28 years old, Julie. I've got my whole life ahead of me. I'm not going to waste it tied down to someone who looks like you, dealing with crying babies and dirty diapers. You wanted kids so desperately. Fine. They're entirely your problem now. But Terrence, we planned this. We talked about names, about their future, about— That was before, he cut her off brutally. Before I realized what having kids would actually mean. Before I saw what pregnancy would do to you. Before I understood that this would be my life. Stuck in this dump of an apartment with someone who can't even make herself presentable. Julie's world was collapsing around her, but somewhere deep inside, a tiny flame of anger began to flicker. These are your daughters, Terrence. They're innocent babies who need their father. They need a father who wants them, Terrence said coldly. That's not me. It was never me. I went along with this pregnancy nonsense to keep you happy, but I'm done pretending. I'm done with all of this. He moved toward the door, then paused for one final, devastating blow. You know what the funny thing is, Julie? I used to think you were beautiful. But now, looking at you like this, I can't imagine what I ever saw in you. No man will ever want you now. You're damaged goods. With that, Terrence Clayton walked out of the delivery room, out of the hospital, and out of Julie's life, leaving her clutching divorce papers while her newborn daughters slept peacefully in their bassinet, unaware that their father had just abandoned them before they'd even learned his face. Julie buried her face in her hands and wept, for her shattered dreams, for her daughters who would grow up without a father, and for the woman she used to be, who had believed in love and happy endings. That woman had died today, in this sterile room, under fluorescent lights that now seemed to mock her with their harsh brightness. But even as her heart broke, something else began to grow in the wreckage of her old life. A fierce, protective love for her daughters that was stronger than any pain Terrence could inflict. A determination that burned brighter than her despair. As she held Jenna and Tamara close to her chest, feeling their tiny hearts beating against her own, Julie made a silent vow. She would rebuild herself from these ashes. She would become strong enough, successful enough, beautiful enough to prove Terrence Clayton wrong about everything. And someday, somehow, he would regret every cruel word he'd spoken. She would show him what he'd thrown away. She would show the world what she was truly worth. And she would make sure her daughters never, ever felt unwanted or unloved the way she did right now. The journey would begin tomorrow. Tonight, she would simply hold her daughters and let herself grieve for the life she'd thought she was going to have. But tomorrow, she would start building something better. A life where love conquered cruelty, where strength grew from suffering, and where two little girls would learn that they were worth everything because their mother would move heaven and earth to prove it. The broken woman in the hospital bed didn't know it yet, but she was about to become unstoppable. Chapter 2. 5 years of survival. 5 years. 1,826 days since the worst and most beautiful moment of Julie's life, the day she'd lost a husband but gained 2 daughters, who became her entire universe. Julie Torres stood in the cramped bathroom of their small 2-bedroom apartment, studying her reflection in the cracked mirror she'd been meaning to replace for months. Dark circles shadowed her brown eyes, and her once lustrous black hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail that had endured too many 12-hour workdays. Her hands, once soft and manicured, now bore the calluses of a woman who cleaned office buildings by night and pursued freelance interior design projects by day. "Mama, Jenna's hogging the bathroom." Tamara's voice carried through the thin door, followed immediately by her twin sister's indignant protest. "Am not. I was here first." Julie smiled despite her exhaustion. At 5 years old, her daughters were everything beautiful about life, distilled into 2 tiny, energetic packages. Jenna, born first by 15 minutes, was the quiet observer with thoughtful dark eyes that missed nothing. Tamara was pure sunshine and determination, with a laugh that could brighten the dreariest day and an opinion about everything under the sun. "Girls, we've talked about sharing," Julie called out, quickly applying concealer under her eyes. Tonight was the Children's Hope Foundation charity dinner, and she couldn't afford to look as tired as she felt. She was working the event as part of the catering staff, another side job that helped pay for dance classes and school supplies. "But Mama," Tamara whined, "Jenna's taking forever, and I need to brush my teeth before Mrs. Peterson arrives." Mrs. Peterson was their elderly neighbor who watched the girls when Julie worked evening events. The 73-year-old widow with arthritic hands and a generous heart was all Julie could afford for childcare, but she genuinely loved Jenna and Tamara as if they were her own grandchildren. Julie opened the bathroom door to find her daughters in their matching purple pajamas, Jenna holding a toothbrush, while Tamara bounced impatiently from foot to foot. "There's room for two little girls to brush their teeth," Julie said, kneeling down to their level. Even in her hurry, she never missed these moments, the everyday magic of being their mother. "But first, give Mama her good luck kisses." Both girls giggled and threw their arms around her neck, planting sloppy kisses on her cheeks. Julie breathed in their sweet, innocent scent and felt her heart expand with the fierce love that had sustained her through every difficult day of the past 5 years. "Will you bring us back dessert?" Jenna asked quietly. She was always more aware than her sister of the sacrifices Julie made, the late nights and early mornings that kept food on their table. "If there's any left over, baby girl," Julie promised, smoothing Jenna's dark hair. "But you know the rule about these fancy parties. The workers don't usually get to take anything home." "That's not fair," Tamara declared with 5-year-old certainty. "You work just as hard as anybody else." Julie's throat tightened. Sometimes her daughter's innocence broke her heart, their assumption that fairness was a given in the world. She'd tried so hard to shield them from the reality of their circumstances, but children were observant. They knew Mama worked all the time. They knew other kids had daddies who came to school plays and soccer games. They knew their clothes came from thrift stores while their classmates wore new things. "Life isn't always fair, sweetheart," Julie said gently, "but that doesn't mean we stop trying to make it better. Now brush those teeth before Mrs. Peterson thinks I'm raising little wild animals." An hour later, Julie stood in the service entrance of the grand ballroom at the Riverside Hotel, smoothing her simple black catering uniform and checking her appearance one final time. The uniform was borrowed from her friend Maria, slightly too big in the shoulders but clean and professional. Julie had learned to be invisible at these events, efficient, polite, and unremarkable. Wealthy people didn't notice the help unless something went wrong. "Torres, you're on wine service tonight," barked Chef Morrison, the perpetually frazzled catering manager. "Start with the VIP section, then work your way through the main floor. And for God's sake, don't spill anything on the guests. Half these people could buy and sell this entire hotel." Julie nodded, lifting her tray of wine glasses with practiced ease. She'd been working catering events for 3 years now, ever since her freelance design work had started bringing in enough money to let her quit the overnight cleaning job. The pay was decent, and sometimes she even enjoyed glimpsing into a world of luxury that felt like something from a dream. The grand ballroom was transformed into an elegant wonderland of crystal chandeliers, white linens, and towering floral arrangements that probably cost more than Julie's monthly rent. Well-dressed guests mingled beneath soft lighting, their jewelry catching the warm glow as they discussed stock portfolios and vacation homes in the Hamptons. Julie moved through the crowd like a ghost, offering wine and collecting empty glasses while snippets of conversation floated around her. "The market's been incredible this quarter. We're thinking of buying a place in Aspen. Did you see what Charlotte wore to the Morrison Gala? Absolutely tragic." She was refilling glasses at a high-top table near the stage when she heard a voice that made her blood freeze. Julie? Julie Torres? She turned slowly, her heart hammering, to find herself face to face with Rebecca Chen, her former college roommate. Rebecca looked exactly as Julie had imagined she would, polished, successful, wearing a dress that probably cost more than Julie made in 3 months. "Oh my goodness, it really is you." Rebecca's smile was bright but confused. "What are you doing here? Are you with the foundation?" Julie felt heat creep up her neck, acutely aware of her polyester uniform and practical shoes. "I'm working the event," she said quietly, gesturing to her tray. "Working?" Rebecca's voice pitched higher. "But you were so talented in design school. I thought you'd be running your own firm by now. Didn't you marry that real estate guy? Terrence something?" The questions hit like physical blows. Julie forced a smile that felt like it might shatter her face. "Life took some unexpected turns. I do freelance design work now, and I have 2 daughters." "Daughters? How wonderful," Rebecca gushed, but her eyes were already scanning the room, looking for an escape from this awkward encounter. "Well, I should let you get back to work. Maybe we can catch up properly sometime." She melted back into the crowd before Julie could respond, leaving her standing there with her tray of wine glasses and her wounded pride. This was why she worked so hard to avoid these situations, why she chose invisible jobs that wouldn't put her in contact with her former life. Julie was heading back to the kitchen, her head down and her cheeks burning with embarrassment, when disaster struck. A man in an expensive tuxedo stepped backward without looking, directly into her path. She tried to swerve, but there was nowhere to go. The collision was inevitable. Red wine exploded across his pristine white shirt like a crimson accusation. Time slowed as Julie watched the liquid spread across the fine fabric, ruining what was undoubtedly a shirt that cost more than her monthly rent. "Oh God, I'm so sorry," Julie gasped, immediately reaching for the napkins on her tray. "I'm so sorry. Let me—" "Hey, it's okay," a deep voice interrupted her panic. "Really, it's completely fine." Julie looked up into the kindest pair of green eyes she'd ever seen. The man was tall, probably in his mid-30s, with dark hair and a face that belonged in magazines. But it was his expression that stopped her cold. Not anger or irritation, but genuine concern for her distress. "Are you hurt?" he asked, reaching out to steady her as she swayed slightly on her feet. No, I'm fine, but your shirt is just a shirt," he said with a smile that made her knees weak. "I've got plenty of shirts. Are you sure you're okay? You look a little pale." Julie realized she was staring and quickly looked down. "I'm fine, really. But I should get you some club soda or salt or something. Maybe it's not too late to save it. Trust me, the shirt is the least of my concerns right now." His voice was warm, and when she glanced up again, he was still watching her with those incredible green eyes. "I'm Henry, by the way. Henry Mills." The name hit her like a thunderbolt. Henry Mills, the Henry Mills. Billionaire philanthropist, tech innovator, and one of the city's most eligible bachelors. She'd seen his picture in magazines, read articles about his charitable work, but the photos hadn't captured the warmth in his eyes or the way his smile made her feel like she was the only person in the room. "I know who you are," she whispered, then immediately wanted to sink through the floor. "I mean, I've read about your foundation work. The children's literacy program is incredible. You know about that?" Henry seemed genuinely surprised and pleased. "Most people just know about the tech company. What's your name?" "Julie. Julie Torres." She felt like she was introducing herself to royalty. "Well, Julie Torres, it's very nice to meet you, even under these circumstances." He gestured to his ruined shirt with good humor. "Now, I have a very important question for you." Julie braced herself for anger, for demands that she pay for the shirt, for the humiliation she deserved. Would you like to have coffee with me sometime, when you're not armed with wine, preferably? The question hit her like a physical force. This couldn't be happening. Men like Henry Mills didn't ask women like her for coffee. They certainly didn't ask women who just dumped wine all over them. You don't want to have coffee with me, she said, her voice barely audible above the party noise. I'm pretty sure I'm the expert on what I want, Henry said gently. And right now, I want to get to know the woman who apologizes so beautifully and knows about children's literacy programs. Before Julie could form a coherent response, Chef Morrison appeared at her elbow like an avenging angel of culinary fury. Torres, what the hell happened here? Did you spill wine on a guest? It was an accident, Henry said firmly before Julie could speak. Entirely my fault. I backed into her without looking. Sir, I'm so sorry, Morrison began, his face red with embarrassment. We'll of course pay for the dry cleaning, and if there's anything else— Actually, there is something else, Henry interrupted, his eyes never leaving Julie's face. I'd like Miss Torres's phone number. Morrison looked like he might faint. Julie was pretty sure she might beat him to it. I should get back to work, Julie managed to say. I'm really sorry about your shirt. She turned to flee, but Henry's voice stopped her. Julie. When she looked back, he was smiling at her like she was something precious. Think about the coffee. I'll be at Morrison's Cafe on 5th Street tomorrow at 2 o'clock, just in case you change your mind. Julie nodded mutely and escaped into the crowd, her heart pounding so hard she was surprised the entire ballroom couldn't hear it. As she made her way back to the kitchen, she told herself that what had just happened was impossible. Men like Henry Mills lived in a different world, a world where shirt costs didn't matter and coffee invitations were casual. But as she worked through the rest of the evening, she couldn't stop thinking about kind green eyes and a smile that had made her feel beautiful for the first time in 5 years. Maybe, just maybe, impossible things could happen to ordinary people. Tomorrow at 2 o'clock, she would find out. Chapter 3. The Billionaire's Heart. Julie stared at her reflection in the thrift store mirror, her hands trembling as she adjusted the collar of the navy blue dress she'd bought for $12 that morning. It was the nicest thing she owned that actually fit properly, but standing here in Morrison's Cafe at 1:58 p.m., she felt like a fraud preparing to infiltrate a world where she didn't belong. She'd almost talked herself out of coming 19 different times in the past 22 hours. What did she have to offer someone like Henry Mills? A man who could have any woman he wanted, who moved in circles where people owned private jets and summer homes in Europe. She was a single mother with 2 part-time jobs and a bank account that rarely held more than 3 digits. But something about his eyes last night had haunted her dreams. The way he'd looked at her, not through her or past her, but directly at her, as if she mattered, as if she was worth seeing. You can do this, she whispered to her reflection. It's just coffee, 1 hour, then you go home to your real life. Morrison's Cafe was the kind of place that served $15 lattes to people who thought nothing of spending her grocery budget on a single meal. Julie had walked past it countless times on her way to various jobs, always feeling like an outsider looking in at a world of beautiful people discussing beautiful lives. Now, standing just inside the door, she scanned the space nervously. Rich wood panels, exposed brick walls, and soft jazz music created an atmosphere of casual elegance that made her feel even more out of place. Julie. She turned toward the familiar voice and felt her breath catch. Henry Mills was rising from a corner table, and somehow he looked even more devastatingly handsome in daylight than he had in the ballroom's flattering lighting. He wore dark jeans and a simple white button-down shirt that probably cost more than her rent, but it was his smile that made her forget how to breathe. You came, he said, and the genuine pleasure in his voice made her knees weak. I almost didn't, she admitted, then immediately regretted her honesty. I'm glad you did. Can I get you something to drink? They make incredible coffee here, but they also have tea, hot chocolate. He paused, studying her face with those perceptive green eyes. You look like a hot chocolate kind of person. Despite her nerves, Julie found herself smiling. Is that supposed to be a compliment? Absolutely. Hot chocolate people are the best kind of people. Warm, comforting, sweet, but with just enough richness to be interesting. Henry's grin was boyish and completely disarming. Coffee people are too practical, tea people are too refined. But hot chocolate people, they know how to find joy in simple pleasures. Julie felt heat creep up her neck. When was the last time someone had talked to her like this? Like she was fascinating instead of invisible. Hot chocolate sounds perfect, she said. As Henry went to order their drinks, Julie slipped into the booth he'd chosen, noting how he'd selected a corner table away from the main crowd. Probably for privacy, she realized, though whether that was for his benefit or hers, she couldn't tell. When he returned with their drinks, her hot chocolate topped with whipped cream and his black coffee, she found herself studying his hands. They were strong but gentle, with long fingers that looked equally comfortable signing billion-dollar deals or building something with his own two hands. So, Henry said, settling across from her with an expectant smile, tell me about Julie Torres. There's not much to tell, she said quickly, wrapping her hands around the warm mug. I'm a single mom with two 5-year-old daughters. I do freelance interior design work when I can get it. That's about it. Somehow, I doubt that's it. Henry leaned forward, his attention entirely focused on her. What kind of interior design do you like to do? Residential, mostly. I love taking spaces that feel cold or unlived in and making them into homes. There's something magical about the right color on a wall or the perfect piece of furniture that makes a house feel like it's wrapping its arms around you. Julie surprised herself with the passion in her voice. It had been so long since anyone had asked about her dreams, her interests, anything beyond whether she could work an extra shift or cover someone's Saturday. That's beautiful, Henry said softly. You make it sound like an art form. It is, in a way, or it can be. Right now, I mostly do small projects, accent walls, furniture arrangements, helping people pick paint colors. But someday, she trailed off, embarrassed by her ambition. Someday what? It's silly. I used to dream about having my own firm, creating spaces that would be featured in magazines, working with clients who trusted me to transform their homes completely. But that requires capital, connections, a portfolio of high-end work. Julie shrugged, trying to make her voice casual. Real life gets in the way of dreams sometimes. Henry was quiet for a long moment, and Julie worried she'd said too much. Rich people probably didn't want to hear about financial struggles and deferred dreams. My parents died when I was 12, he said suddenly, his voice soft but clear. Car accident on a rainy Tuesday night. One minute I was a normal kid complaining about homework, and the next I was an orphan being shuffled between relatives who saw me as either a burden or a ticket to my parents' life insurance money. Julie's heart clenched. Henry, I'm so sorry. I ended up with my Uncle Marcus, who was a good man but had no idea how to raise a grieving kid. He owned a small construction company, and he put me to work as soon as I was old enough to hold a hammer. Said it would keep me out of trouble and teach me the value of hard work. Henry paused to take a sip of his coffee, and Julie waited, sensing this story was important. I hated it at first. I was angry at the world, angry at my parents for leaving me, angry at having to work while other kids played video games. But gradually I started to love the feeling of building something with my hands, taking raw materials and creating something useful, something that would last. Is that how you got into tech? Julie asked. In a way. I started thinking about building things that could help people, solve problems, make life better. I got a scholarship to MIT, studied computer science, started my first company when I was 23. Henry's eyes met hers across the table. But you know what I learned along the way? What? Success means nothing if you don't have people to share it with. Family, real connections, love. His voice grew quieter. I have more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes, but what I really want is what I see in your eyes when you talk about your daughters. Julie's throat tightened. What do you see? Purpose. The kind of love that makes everything else worthwhile. I've spent the last few years using my money to help families because I remember what it felt like to lose mine. But watching you last night, seeing how you carried yourself, even when you were clearly exhausted, the way you apologized like my ruined shirt, was the end of the world. Henry smiled. You have something I've been searching for my whole life. What's that? A good heart, authentic kindness, the kind of strength that comes from putting other people first. He reached across the table and gently touched her hand. I want to know everything about you, Julie. Your favorite color, what makes you laugh, what you dream about when you think no one's listening. Julie stared down at his hand covering hers, overwhelmed by the warmth of his touch and the sincerity in his voice. I don't understand. You could have anyone. Models, actresses, women who belong in your world. Why me? Because, Henry said, lifting her chin gently so she had to look at him. Those women want what I have, not who I am. They see the money, the lifestyle, the security. But you don't even know what I'm worth. And you still showed up today because you saw something in me worth knowing. I saw your kindness, Julie admitted. The way you protected me from my boss last night. How you made me feel like the accident was no big deal when it could have been a disaster for me. See? You get it. You understand that how we treat people matters more than what we own. Henry's thumb brushed across her knuckles, sending shivers up her arm. Tell me about your daughters. Julie's face lit up instantly. Jenna and Tamara, they're twins, but completely different personalities. Jenna's my little philosopher. She thinks about everything so deeply and asks questions that sometimes stop me in my tracks. Last week, she asked me why some people have everything they need while others don't have enough. What did you tell her? That life isn't always fair, but that doesn't mean we stop trying to make it better. That we can't control what happens to us, but we can control how we respond to it. Smart woman, both of you, it sounds like. Henry's smile was warm with genuine interest. What about Tamara? Tamara is pure sunshine wrapped in 5-year-old determination. She's going to be a dancer, a teacher, a veterinarian, and the president, probably all at the same time. She believes in magic and happy endings, and that if you wish hard enough, anything is possible. Do you believe that too? Julie considered the question seriously. I used to, before ... She stopped, not ready to share that story yet. Before what? Before I learned that sometimes the people you trust most are the ones who can hurt you deepest. She looked down at her hot chocolate, surprised by her own honesty. My ex-husband left me the day the girls were born. He said some things that made me believe I wasn't worth loving. Henry's hand tightened on hers, and when she looked up, his eyes were blazing with protective anger. He was wrong. You don't know that. Yes, I do. Henry's voice was fierce. I've known you for exactly 24 hours, and I can already see what he was too blind to recognize. You're beautiful, Julie. Not just physically, though you absolutely are. You're beautiful in all the ways that matter. The way you love your daughters, the way you work so hard to give them a good life, the way you carry yourself with dignity, even when life knocks you down. Tears pricked Julie's eyes. It had been so long since someone had spoken to her like she had value, like she was worthy of admiration and respect. I scare easily these days, she whispered. I'm not the same person I was before. I'm more careful, more guarded. I don't know if I remember how to trust someone new. Then we'll take it slow, Henry said simply. As slow as you need. I'm not going anywhere, Julie. I meant what I said about wanting to know you. All of you. The dreams you're afraid to say out loud, the fears that keep you awake at night, the little things that make you smile when no one's watching. Why? The question slipped out before she could stop it. Because, Henry said, bringing her hand to his lips and pressing the softest kiss to her knuckles, I think you might be exactly what I've been waiting for, and I hope, someday, you might feel the same way about me. As Julie sat in that corner booth, her hand warm in his and her heart beating faster than it had in years, she realized that maybe, just maybe, Tamara was right about magic and happy endings. Maybe sometimes, if you wished hard enough and were brave enough to take a chance, anything really was possible, even for a woman who'd forgotten how to believe in fairy tales. I'd like to try, she said quietly. Taking it slow, I mean. Getting to know each other. Henry's smile was radiant. I can't think of anything I'd like more. And as they sat talking until the cafe began to empty around them, Julie felt something she hadn't experienced in 5 long years. Hope for a future that might be more beautiful than anything she dared to dream. Chapter 4. The Ultimate Makeover. 3 weeks had passed since that first coffee date, and Julie still felt like she was living in someone else's dream. Henry called every evening at exactly 7:30, after she'd put Jenna and Tamara to bed, and they would talk for hours about everything and nothing. He'd taken her on 4 more dates, a quiet dinner at a small Italian restaurant, a morning walk through the botanical gardens, an afternoon at the art museum where he'd listened with genuine fascination as she explained how different artists used color and space, and a simple picnic in the park where they'd fed ducks and shared childhood stories. Each time, Julie felt herself relaxing a little more, laughing a little easier, remembering the woman she used to be before Terence had systematically destroyed her confidence. But she was also acutely aware of the gulf between their worlds. Henry's casual mention of his weekend place in Napa, or his offhand comment about flying to New York for a board meeting served as constant reminders that they came from different planets. This morning he'd called with an unusual request that made her stomach flutter with anxiety. I want to take you shopping, he'd said without preamble, after their usual good-morning pleasantries. Shopping for what? Julie had asked, immediately wary. She was standing in her tiny kitchen, making peanut butter sandwiches for the girls' lunch, while simultaneously trying to iron a blouse for her afternoon client meeting. For you. Clothes, maybe some professional styling. I want to spoil you a little, help you see yourself the way I see you. Henry, I can't let you do that. I won't be one of those women who what? Who lets someone care about them. His voice had been gentle but firm. Julie, you've been wearing variations of the same 3 outfits to our dates. Not because you don't have style, but because you don't have options that make you feel confident. The observation had hit too close to home. Julie had stood there in her cramped kitchen, the iron steaming in her hand, and felt tears prick her eyes because he was absolutely right. I don't need fancy clothes to be happy, she'd said quietly. I know that. That's one of the things I adore about you. The L word had hung in the air between them, unexpected and terrifying and wonderful. But you deserve to feel beautiful, Julie. You deserve to walk into a room and know that you look incredible. Not for me, not for anyone else, but for yourself. I don't know how to accept help, she'd admitted. Then let me teach you. Please, let me give you this gift. And now, standing outside Bella Lux Spa and Salon on 5th Avenue, Julie was fighting every instinct that told her to run. This wasn't just shopping, this was transformation, and she wasn't sure she was ready to become someone new. Henry appeared at her elbow as if he'd materialized from thin air, handsome in dark jeans and a charcoal sweater that probably cost more than her monthly food budget. "Second thoughts?" he asked, reading her expression with unsettling accuracy. "Third and fourth thoughts," Julie admitted. "Henry, this place looks like somewhere celebrities come. I don't belong here." "You belong anywhere I want to take you," he said simply, then softened his voice. "But if you're really uncomfortable, we can leave right now. No questions asked." Julie looked through the floor-to-ceiling windows at the elegant interior, all marble and crystal and beautiful people moving with the confidence that came from never being told they weren't worth loving. Part of her wanted to retreat to the safety of her small world, where expectations were low and disappointment was rare. But a larger part, a part that had been growing stronger with each conversation, each laugh she'd shared with Henry, was tired of hiding, tired of feeling invisible, tired of letting Terrence's cruel words dictate how she saw herself. "What exactly are we doing here?" she asked. "Whatever you want," Henry said. "Hair, makeup, personal styling. Or we could just get our nails done and call it a day. You're in complete control." The phrase, complete control, decided her. When had she last felt in control of anything in her life? "Okay," she said, taking a deep breath. "But if I look ridiculous, I'm blaming you." Henry's smile was brilliant. "Deal. Though I think that's the least likely outcome in the history of makeovers." The next 4 hours passed in a blur of luxury that Julie had never imagined existed. The salon staff treated her like royalty, bringing her sparkling water with cucumber slices and asking her opinion on every tiny detail. The stylist, a pixie-like woman named Sophia with purple streaks in her white hair, spent an hour just talking to Julie about her lifestyle, her preferences, and what would make her feel most confident. "Your bone structure is incredible," Sophia murmured, running her fingers through Julie's long dark hair. "And this natural wave is gorgeous. But we're going to give you some layers to frame your face. Maybe bring it up to just past your shoulders. Something that looks effortless but makes every feature pop." The makeup artist, a gentleman named David, who spoke in soothing tones, transformed Julie's face with subtle artistry that enhanced rather than masked her natural beauty. He taught her simple techniques as he worked, showing her how to define her eyes and emphasize her full lips without looking overdone. "You have the most beautiful brown eyes," he said, applying a hint of gold shadow that made them sparkle. "They're like dark honey. We want to make sure people notice them first." While Julie was being pampered, Henry had disappeared with a personal shopper named Isabel, a sophisticated woman in her 50s who moved with the efficiency of someone who understood both fashion and budgets. When they returned, Isabel was carrying garment bags and shopping bags with the logos of stores Julie had only dreamed of entering. "I hope you don't mind," Henry said, suddenly looking nervous. "I may have gotten a little carried away. But Isabel promised me everything is practical and versatile, things you can wear to client meetings or—" He paused, a slight flush coloring his cheeks. "Or on dates with me." Julie wanted to protest, to insist that this was too much, too expensive, too everything. But then she caught sight of herself in the salon's full-length mirrors, and the words died in her throat. The woman looking back at her was stunning. Her hair fell in soft, glossy waves that caught the light with every movement. Her skin glowed with health and subtle makeup that made her look like the best possible version of herself. But it was her eyes that shocked her most. They were bright, alive, filled with a confidence she'd forgotten she possessed. "Oh my God," she whispered. "You're so beautiful," Henry said quietly, coming to stand behind her. "You were always beautiful, but now you look like you know it." And that was exactly what had changed, Julie realized. It wasn't just the hair or the makeup or the promise of a new wardrobe. It was the way she was holding herself, the straightness of her spine, the lift of her chin. For the first time in 6 years, she looked in a mirror and didn't hear Terrence's voice telling her she was ugly. "I want to try on the clothes," she said suddenly. Isabel clapped her hands together. "Wonderful. I've selected pieces that will work together in multiple combinations. Classic silhouettes in colors that complement your skin tone. Nothing too trendy. We want timeless elegance." The first outfit was a simple black sheath dress with a cropped blazer, professional but feminine. The fabric felt like silk against her skin, and the fit was perfect, skimming her curves without being too tight. "For client meetings or business lunches," Isabel explained. "The dress can be worn alone for evening events, and the blazer works with jeans for a casual, chic look." Next came a flowing emerald green blouse with dark jeans and a cream-colored cashmere cardigan. The green brought out the gold flecks in her brown eyes, and the whole ensemble made her look effortlessly sophisticated. "This is too much," Julie said, but her protest lacked conviction. She felt different in these clothes, confident, professional, worthy of respect. "It's an investment," Henry said. "In your business, in your future. Clients take you more seriously when you look successful." They spent another hour going through the carefully curated wardrobe Isabel had assembled. A burgundy wrap dress, tailored slacks in charcoal and navy, silk blouses in ivory and dusty rose, a camel-colored trench coat that made Julie feel like a movie star. The final touch was a delicate gold necklace with a small pendant, nothing flashy but elegant and timeless. "From me to you," Henry said as he fastened it around her neck, his fingers gentle against her skin. "So you'll have something to remind you of today." Julie touched the pendant, overwhelmed by the gesture and everything it represented. "Henry, I don't know how to thank you." "You don't need to thank me. Just promise me you'll never let anyone make you feel invisible again." As Julie stood there in her new emerald blouse and perfectly fitted jeans, her hair shining and her confidence restored, she made a silent vow. She would never again let anyone diminish her worth. She would never again hide in the shadows or apologize for taking up space. The drive home was quiet, both of them lost in their own thoughts. Julie kept catching glimpses of herself in the passenger mirror, still startled by her transformation. She looked successful, polished, like a woman who belonged in Henry's world. When they reached her apartment building, Henry walked her to the door, carrying the garment bags with her new wardrobe. "The girls are going to be so surprised," Julie said, suddenly nervous about their reaction. What if they didn't recognize her? What if they thought she looked strange? "They're going to think their mama looks like a princess," Henry said confidently. He was right. When Mrs. Peterson opened the door and saw Julie, her eyes widened with shock and delight. "My goodness, dear, you look absolutely radiant." Jenna and Tamara came running from the living room, then stopped short when they saw their mother. "Mama," Jenna said uncertainly, "you look so pretty." "Do you like it?" Julie asked, kneeling down to their level. "You look like a movie star," Tamara declared, throwing her arms around Julie's neck. "Are you going to be on TV now?" Julie laughed, feeling lighter than she had in years. "No, baby. I'm still just Mama, just a prettier version." "You were always pretty," Jenna said seriously. "But now you look happy too." "Out of the mouths of babes." Julie looked over at Henry, who was watching the scene with an expression of such tenderness that it made her heart skip. "Thank you," she mouthed to him. "Thank you," he mouthed back, and she knew he meant for letting him be part of this moment, part of her family's happiness. That night, after the girls were asleep and Henry had gone home, Julie stood in front of her bathroom mirror for a long time. The woman looking back at her was still her, but better, stronger, more confident, ready to take on the world. She thought about Terrence's parting words 5 years ago, about how no one could ever love someone like her. Looking at herself now, she realized he'd been wrong about everything. She was worth loving. She was worth seeing. She was worth everything good that was happening to her. And tomorrow she would start believing it completely. The transformation was more than skin deep. For the first time since that horrible day in the hospital, Julie Torres felt beautiful, not just on the outside, but all the way through to her soul. Chapter 5. Daddy Henry. Julie's hands trembled slightly as she smoothed Jenna's hair for the third time, her nerves making her fidget with anything within reach. Today was the day Henry was meeting her daughters properly. Not a brief introduction in a hallway, but a real afternoon together at the Natural History Museum. After 2 months of careful courtship, phone calls that stretched long into the night, and dates that left her feeling like she was rediscovering herself, this felt like the most important test of all. "Mama, you're messing up my hair," Jenna protested gently, though she leaned into Julie's touch anyway. "I know, baby, I'm just nervous." Julie knelt down so she was eye level with both girls, her heart swelling with love and anxiety in equal measure. At 5 years old, Jenna and Tamara were her entire world, and their opinion of Henry mattered more than anything else. "Why are you nervous about Mr. Henry?" Tamara asked, bouncing slightly in her purple sneakers. "He seemed nice when he brought you flowers." That had been last week, when Henry had stopped by unexpectedly with a bouquet of daisies, not expensive roses or exotic orchids, but simple flowers that made Julie smile because they reminded her of childhood summers. The girls had peeked out from behind Julie's legs, curious but shy. "He is nice," Julie said carefully, "but this is different. Today we're spending time together, all 4 of us. I want you to have fun, but I also want you to feel comfortable telling me anything, okay? If you don't like something, or if you feel scared or confused, you can always talk to Mama." "Are you going to marry him?" Jenna asked with the directness that always caught Julie off guard. We're just friends right now, sweetheart. Good friends who like spending time together." "But you get all smiley when he calls," Tamara observed with 5-year-old wisdom, "and you wear your pretty green shirt more now." Julie couldn't deny that. Henry had awakened something in her that she'd thought was gone forever. The ability to feel feminine and desired and worth pursuing. But she was also terrified of moving too fast, of letting her daughters get attached to someone who might not stay. "Sometimes adults need time to figure out their feelings," Julie explained. "But no matter what happens with Mr. Henry, you two are the most important people in my life. Nothing and nobody will ever change that." The doorbell rang, and Julie's stomach flip-flopped. Through the peephole, she could see Henry holding a small gift bag, looking almost as nervous as she felt. He'd dressed down for the occasion, jeans, sneakers, and a simple blue button-down that made his green eyes even more striking. "He's here," she called to the girls, then took a deep breath and opened the door. "Hi," Henry said, his smile warm but uncertain. "Ready for some dinosaurs?" "I think so. Girls, come say hello to Mr. Henry." Jenna appeared first, walking with her characteristic thoughtfulness, while Tamara bounded over with her usual enthusiasm. "Mr. Henry," Tamara announced, "I've been reading about dinosaurs all week. Did you know that T-Rex had tiny arms, but they were actually super strong?" Henry's face lit up with genuine delight. "I did know that. Did you also know that they probably couldn't run very fast because they were so heavy?" "Really?" Jenna stepped closer, her scientific curiosity overriding her shyness. "How fast could they go?" "I think that's something we can find out at the museum," Henry said, then held up the gift bag. "But first, I brought you both something small." Julie tensed. She'd specifically asked him not to bring expensive gifts, worried about setting a precedent the girls might come to expect. Henry seemed to sense her concern. "Don't worry," he said quietly. "Nothing extravagant." Inside the bag were two small notebooks with dinosaur covers and a pack of colored pencils to share. I thought you might want to draw pictures of your favorite exhibits, he explained, and maybe write down the cool facts you learn. It was perfect, thoughtful without being overwhelming, encouraging their interests without trying to buy their affection. Julie felt some of her tension ease. "Thank you, Mr. Henry," both girls said in unison, practicing the manners Julie had drilled into them. "You're very welcome. Now, shall we go learn about some very, very old animals?" The drive to the museum was filled with chatter from Tamara and careful questions from Jenna. Henry answered everything with patience and enthusiasm, treating their curiosity with the same respect he might show a fellow scientist. "Mr. Henry," Jenna said as they pulled into the museum parking lot, "do you have any kids?" Julie held her breath. They discussed this topic in general terms, but she'd never told the girls about Henry's childhood, about the parents he'd lost, and the family he'd never had. "No, I don't," Henry said simply. "But I've always hoped I would someday. I think being a dad would be the best job in the world." "It's not a job," Tamara informed him seriously. "It's just loving someone a lot and taking care of them." Henry met Julie's eyes in the rearview mirror, and she saw something vulnerable and hopeful there. "You're absolutely right. That's exactly what it is." Inside the museum, magic happened. Henry didn't just walk through the exhibits with them. He got down on their level, literally and figuratively. When Tamara wanted to touch everything, he helped her find the interactive displays. When Jenna had questions about fossil formation, he listened carefully and helped her find the information she was seeking. In the dinosaur hall, he lifted both girls so they could see over the crowds to the massive T-Rex skeleton. "Wow," Jenna breathed, her notebook forgotten in her amazement. "He's really big," Tamara said, then looked down at Henry with complete trust. "You're strong. I felt really safe up there." Julie's heart clenched. Her daughters had never had a man in their lives who made them feel protected and cherished. Watching Henry's gentle strength with them was both beautiful and terrifying. At the Butterfly Conservatory, Henry sat cross-legged on a bench while both girls climbed all over him, showing him the pictures they'd drawn in their new notebooks. A blue morpho butterfly landed on his shoulder, and Tamara gasped with delight. "It likes you," she declared. "That means you're a good person. Mama told me that animals can tell." Did she now? Henry's eyes found Julie across the conservatory, where she was taking pictures with her phone. "What else did your mama tell you?" "That we should trust our feelings about people," Jenna said thoughtfully, "and that if someone makes us feel safe and happy, they're probably good." "Do I make you feel safe and happy?" Henry asked gently. Both girls nodded without hesitation. "You smell like soap and you listen when we talk," Tamara said matter-of-factly, "and you don't get mad when I ask lots of questions." "I like your questions. They're smart questions." "Jenna asks smarter questions than me," Tamara said without jealousy. "But she says I'm better at making people laugh." "I think you're both pretty perfect at being exactly who you are," Henry said, and Julie had to blink back tears at the sincerity in his voice. Lunch was at the museum cafe, and Julie watched in amazement as Henry navigated the chaos of eating with 5-year-olds. He helped Tamara open her juice box, cut Jenna's sandwich into triangles the way she preferred, and somehow managed to keep both girls entertained with silly jokes while actually eating his own meal. "Mr. Henry," Jenna said during a brief lull in Tamara's chatter, "why don't you have a family?" The question hung in the air, innocent but profound. Julie started to intervene, but Henry held up a gentle hand. "That's a really good question, Jenna. I guess I never found the right people to be my family. But you know what? I'm starting to think that maybe family isn't just about the people you're born with. Maybe it's also about the people who choose to love you. Like how Mama chose to love us extra much because our daddy went away," Tamara asked. Julie's breath caught. They'd never talked about Terence in such direct terms. Exactly like that, Henry said softly. Your mama loves you both so much that it makes up for anyone who's missing. But it would be nice to have a daddy too, Jenna said wistfully. Someone to play catch with and fix things and read bedtime stories in a deep voice. What would you want in a daddy? Henry asked, and Julie realized he was genuinely curious, not fishing for compliments. Someone kind, Jenna said immediately. Someone who makes Mama smile. Someone who knows about dinosaurs and butterflies and doesn't mind when I sing too loud in the car, Tamara added. Someone who would love us even when we're not perfect, Jenna finished quietly. Henry was quiet for a moment, clearly moved by their honesty. Those sound like very reasonable requirements for a daddy. I hope you find someone like that someday. Maybe we already did, Tamara said, looking directly at him with 5-year-old certainty. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur of exhibits and laughter and moments that felt like family. Julie found herself relaxing completely for the first time in months, watching Henry seamlessly integrate himself into their little world. On the drive home, both girls fell asleep in their car seats, exhausted from the day's adventures. The car was quiet except for their soft breathing and the gentle hum of the engine. They're incredible, Henry said quietly. Julie, you've raised 2 absolutely remarkable little girls. They liked you, Julie said, her voice thick with emotion. They really liked you. Did they pass your test? Henry asked with a gentle smile. What test? The one where you watch how I interact with the most important people in your life and decide if I'm worth the risk. Julie was quiet for a moment, considering his words. I wasn't testing you. I was hoping you'd see how amazing they are, hoping they'd feel comfortable with you, hoping what? Hoping that maybe we could all be happy together. Henry reached over and took her hand, intertwining their fingers. I want that too, more than I've ever wanted anything. When they reached her apartment, Henry helped carry 2 sleepy girls upstairs. Julie got them into pajamas while Henry waited in the living room, looking at the photos on her mantel, pictures of birthday parties and first days of school, moments of joy captured in their small but love-filled home. Mr. Henry, Jenna appeared in the hallway, rubbing her eyes. Are you leaving now? I am, sweetheart, but I had the best day with you and your sister and your mama. Will you come back soon? Henry looked at Julie, seeking permission. At her nod, he smiled. If your mama says it's okay, I'd love to come back very soon. Good, Jenna said decisively. I want to show you my rock collection next time. After both girls were properly tucked into bed, Julie walked Henry to the door. They stood there for a moment, both aware that something fundamental had shifted today. Thank you, Julie said, for being so good with them, for seeing them the way I see them. Thank you for sharing them with me, for trusting me with what matters most to you. Henry cupped her face gently, his thumb brushing across her cheek. Julie, I'm falling in love with all 3 of you. I hope that's okay. Instead of the panic she'd expected to feel, Julie felt a warm glow of rightness settle in her chest. It's more than okay. I think we're falling in love with you too. When Henry kissed her goodnight, soft and sweet and full of promise, Julie knew they'd crossed a line they couldn't uncross. They weren't just dating anymore, they were becoming a family. And for the first time in 5 years, that didn't scare her. It felt like coming home. Chapter 6, Walls Begin to Crumble. Julie stood in the grocery store checkout line, her stomach nodding as the cashier scanned each item. Mentally, she was calculating milk, bread, peanut butter, pasta, canned tomatoes, frozen vegetables. $37.43. She had exactly $40 in her wallet, which meant she could afford everything in her cart, plus a small treat for the girls. It was a familiar dance, this careful budgeting of every penny, but lately it had become more complicated. Henry's presence in their lives had made her acutely aware of the vast difference between their worlds. When he casually mentioned spending the weekend at his house in the mountains, or talked about flying to San Francisco for a board meeting, Julie was reminded that his monthly charity donations probably exceeded her annual income. "That'll be $37.43, the cashier said with practiced indifference. Julie handed over two $20 bills and was counting her change when her phone buzzed with a text from Henry. "At the farmer's market, thinking of you. Want me to grab dinner ingredients and cook for you all tonight?" Her first instinct was to say yes. After working a full day at 3 different client consultations, the thought of someone else handling dinner was deeply appealing. But then she imagined Henry in her tiny kitchen, trying to cook on her temperamental stove, making himself at home in her cramped space, while spending money on ingredients that probably cost more than her entire grocery budget. She texted back, "Already got groceries, but thank you." "Rain check." His response was immediate. "Of course. Can I call you later?" Julie was sliding her phone back into her purse when it rang. Henry's name lit up the screen, and despite her complicated feelings, her heart did its usual skip. "Hi," she answered, wheeling her cart toward the exit. "Hi yourself. Quick question. Are you avoiding me?" Julie stopped walking, surprised by his directness. "What?" "Number, why would you think that?" "Because you've turned down my last 3 invitations, and just now you deflected when I offered to cook dinner. If you need space, just tell me. I can handle honesty better than guessing." Julie found herself in the parking lot, gripping the phone tighter. This was exactly what she'd been hoping to avoid. The awkward conversation about money and class, and all the reasons why this relationship was complicated. "I'm not avoiding you," she said carefully. It's complicated, Henry." "What's complicated?" "Talk to me." Julie loaded her groceries into her aging Honda Civic, each bag a reminder of the careful choices that defined her life. "You offered to grab dinner ingredients. Do you know what that means to someone like me?" "Someone like you?" "Someone who just spent $40 on groceries and considered it a splurge because I was able to buy name-brand peanut butter instead of generic." The words came out sharper than she'd intended, edged with embarrassment and frustration. Henry was quiet for a long moment. "Julie, I never meant to make you feel—" "It's not what you meant, it's what it is," she interrupted, her emotions finally spilling over. "You live in a world where money isn't a consideration. You don't think about whether you can afford something, you just buy it. But I have to plan every purchase, budget every dollar, choose between the girls' dance classes and fixing my car when it breaks down. So let me help with that. No." The word came out fierce and final. "I won't be your charity case, Henry. I won't be the poor single mother you rescue with your money." "Is that really what you think this is?" His voice was quiet now, hurt. Julie leaned against her car, suddenly exhausted. "I don't know what this is. I don't know how to be with someone who can solve all my problems with his credit card. It makes me feel small, dependent, like I'm not bringing anything to this relationship except need." "You think you're not bringing anything?" Henry's voice rose slightly. "Julie, you brought me a family. You brought me love and purpose and the feeling that I matter to someone beyond my bank account. You brought me 2 incredible little girls who call me Mr. Henry, like it's the most important title in the world. How can you think that's not enough?" Tears pricked Julie's eyes. "Because it's not equal. You give me security, stability, things I can't provide for my daughters on my own. What do I give you in return?" "Everything," Henry said simply. "You give me everything that matters." Julie sat in her car for a long time after they hung up, staring at her phone and replaying the conversation. Part of her wanted to call him back, to apologize for pushing him away when all he'd done was try to care for her. But a larger part was scared, scared of becoming dependent, scared of losing herself in his world, scared of what would happen to her and the girls if this relationship ended and she'd gotten used to a life she couldn't maintain on her own. That evening, as she made pasta with marinara sauce and tried to help Jenna with her math homework while Tamara practiced her dance routine in the living room, Julie's phone rang again. This time it was Henry's name on the screen, but when she answered, she heard Jenna's voice. "Hi, Mr. Henry." Julie spun around to find Jenna holding the phone, beaming with delight. "Jenna, how did you—" "He called and I answered," Jenna said matter-of-factly. "He wants to talk to you, but I told him about my math first. He's really good at explaining fractions." Julie took the phone with a mixture of exasperation and reluctant affection. "Henry? Hi. Sorry for calling the house line, but you weren't answering your cell. Jenna needed help with math, and apparently I'm now the official homework consultant." Despite her complicated feelings, Julie found herself smiling. "You don't have to help with homework. That's not your responsibility." "I want to help with homework. I want to be involved in their lives, Julie. In your life. But I need you to help me understand the rules." "What rules?" "The rules about how to care about you without making you feel diminished. How to be part of this family without disrupting the amazing thing you've built. How to love you without making you feel like you owe me something." Julie sank into her kitchen chair, overwhelmed by the sincerity in his voice. "I don't know the rules either. I've never done this before, letting someone in when I have so much to protect. Then let's figure it out together. Can I come over? Not to cook dinner or bring expensive groceries or fix everything with money. Just to be there. To help Jenna with fractions and listen to Tamara's songs and maybe hold your hand while we watch a movie. Henry, please, let me be present in your real life, not just the dressed-up version you show me on dates. Let me see what normal looks like for you, and let me be part of it. No agenda, no rescue mission, just us." 30 minutes later, Henry knocked on her apartment door, carrying nothing but a small bag of ice cream, not expensive gelato from some artisan shop, but regular vanilla ice cream from the grocery store. "Dessert," he said simply when she opened the door. "I figured everyone likes ice cream." "Mr. Henry," Tamara launched herself at his legs. "Did you come to help with my dance routine? I learned a new spin." "I would love to see your spin," Henry said, scooping her up in a hug. "But first, I think your sister might need some help with those fractions." Julie watched from the kitchen doorway as Henry settled on the living room floor with Jenna, her math homework spread between them. He was wearing jeans and a simple sweater, and he looked completely at ease in their cramped apartment with its second-hand furniture and toys scattered on every surface. "See, fractions are just parts of a whole," he was explaining patiently. "Like if we have one pizza and we cut it into 4 pieces, each piece is 1/4 of the whole pizza." "But what if someone eats 2 pieces?" Jenna asked. "Then we have 2/4 eaten and 2/4 left," Henry said. "Which is the same as saying 1/2 left." Julie found herself relaxing as she watched them work together. This wasn't Henry the billionaire philanthropist trying to save them with his wealth. This was just Henry sitting on her living room floor, being patient with a 5-year-old's questions about math. "Mama, can Mr. Henry stay for ice cream?" Tamara asked, appearing at Julie's elbow. "If he wants to," Julie said carefully. "I definitely want to," Henry said, looking up at her with those green eyes that made her forget all her carefully constructed defenses. "If that's okay with you." They ate ice cream in bowls that didn't match, sitting around Julie's small dining table while the girls chattered about their day at school. Henry listened to every word with genuine interest, asking follow-up questions about playground politics and cafeteria mysteries. After the girls were in bed, Julie and Henry sat on her couch, careful inches between them. "Thank you," Julie said quietly, "for coming over, for not trying to fix everything. Thank you for letting me in, for showing me this." He gestured around the small apartment. "Your home, your real life. It's beautiful, Julie. It's tiny and cramped and nothing like what you're used to. It's full of love," Henry said simply. "I've lived in mansions that felt emptier than this apartment. Space doesn't make a home. Love does." Julie felt something inside her chest loosen, a knot of tension she'd been carrying since their phone argument. "I'm scared," she admitted, "of getting used to having you here, of my girls getting attached and then losing you, of forgetting how to take care of myself, because it's easier to let you take care of me." Henry shifted closer, reaching for her hand. "I'm scared too, of saying the wrong thing, of moving too fast, of loving you so much that I overwhelm you." He paused, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. "But I'd rather be scared with you than safe without you. What if we mess this up? What if the money thing becomes too much of a problem? Then we'll work through it, together. We'll make mistakes and figure out solutions and probably argue about it again." Henry smiled softly. "But Julie, love isn't about being perfect or having all the answers. It's about choosing each other every day, even when it's complicated." Julie looked around her small living room, at the evidence of the life she'd built from nothing. Photos of birthday parties and school plays, handmade artwork stuck to the refrigerator, a basket of clean laundry waiting to be folded. It wasn't much by worldly standards, but it was theirs. "I choose you," she said quietly, "even though it scares me, even though I don't know how all the pieces fit together yet. I choose this." Henry leaned closer, cupping her face gently. "I choose you too. All of you. The morning chaos and the homework battles and the grocery store budgets. I choose your real life, Julie, not some fantasy version of it." When he kissed her, soft and sure and full of promise, Julie felt the last of her walls crumble. This wasn't a fairy tale where the prince rescued the princess with his riches. This was something better. Two people choosing to build something beautiful together, one imperfect moment at a time. And for the first time since Henry had entered their lives, Julie believed they might actually make it work. Chapter 7. Becoming a Family. 8 months had passed since that evening when Julie had finally let her walls crumble and their lives had settled into a rhythm that felt both magical and natural. Henry now had a key to Julie's apartment and his own coffee mug in her kitchen cabinet. A simple ceramic mug that read, "World's Okayest Dad," that Tamara had picked out for him at a school fundraiser. This particular Saturday morning found Henry on the living room floor, helping Jenna build an elaborate castle out of blocks, while Tamara practiced her lines for the school play. Julie watched from the kitchen as she prepared pancake batter, her heart swelling with a contentment she'd never thought possible. "Mr. Henry, do you think princesses really lived in castles like this?" Jenna asked, carefully placing a tower block. "I think princesses lived wherever they felt safe and loved," Henry replied thoughtfully. "Sometimes that was a castle, but sometimes it might have been a small house or even an apartment. Like how Mama is our princess and we live in an apartment. Exactly like that." Julie smiled, struck once again by Henry's ability to make every moment feel significant and special. He'd woven himself into their daily routines so seamlessly that she sometimes forgot there had ever been a time when he wasn't part of their lives. "Pancakes are ready," she called, and Henry scooped up both girls, one under each arm, carrying them to the kitchen while they giggled and shrieked with delight. "Higher, Mr. Henry," Tamara demanded. "Carry me like I'm flying." "I am the flying machine," Henry announced in a dramatic voice, swooping her around the small kitchen, delivering one princess to the breakfast table. As they settled around the table, Jenna growing serious as she always did when she had something important to say, Julie noticed the way Henry automatically cut up Tamara's pancakes and handed Jenna the syrup without being asked. These small gestures of care had become second nature to him. "Mr. Henry," Jenna said carefully, "can I ask you something important?" "Always, sweetheart." "Why don't you call yourself our daddy?" The question hung in the air, innocent but loaded with meaning. Julie's breath caught, and she saw Henry's hand pause halfway to his coffee cup. "What makes you ask that?" Henry said gently. "Well, you do daddy things. You help with homework and fix our toys when they break, and you carried Tamara to the car when she fell asleep at the park last week." Jenna ticked off the items on her small fingers. "And you make Mama happy, which is what daddies are supposed to do." "And you smell like home now," Tamara added matter-of-factly. "Mama told me that people who belong to your family smell like home." Julie felt tears prick her eyes. Out of the mouths of babes, indeed. Henry was quiet for a moment, his green eyes moving between the two girls and then to Julie. "That's the nicest thing anyone has ever said to me," he said finally. "About smelling like home. But being a daddy is a very special thing, and it's not something I can just decide by myself." "You mean you have to ask Mama?" Tamara asked. "I mean I have to ask all three of you, your Mama and you and Jenna, because becoming a family is something we all have to choose together." Jenna considered this with her characteristic seriousness. "If we chose you to be our daddy, would you choose us back?" "In a heartbeat," Henry said without hesitation. "I would choose you both every single day for the rest of my life. You two are the most incredible kids I've ever known, and being part of your lives has been the greatest honor of mine." "What about Mama?" Tamara pressed. "Would you choose her too?" Henry's eyes met Julie's across the table, and she saw everything in them: love, hope, fear, commitment, and a vulnerability that made her heart ache with tenderness. "I would choose your Mama every day, in every life, in every universe," he said softly. "She's the strongest, most beautiful, most amazing woman I've ever known." "Then I choose you to be our daddy," Tamara announced decisively. "Jenna, do you choose him too?" "Yes," Jenna said solemnly. "I choose Mr. Henry to be our dad." Both girls turned to look at Julie expectantly, and she realized she was crying. Not sad tears, but tears of joy and overwhelming love for these three people who had become her whole world. "I choose Henry too," she whispered. "I choose all of this." Later that afternoon, while the girls napped, Julie and Henry sat on her small balcony, sharing a bottle of wine and talking about the morning's revelation. "They want you to adopt them," Julie said quietly. "Legally, I mean. Make it official." "Is that what you want?" Henry asked. "I want them to have a father who will never leave them, who will love them unconditionally, who will be there for every important moment of their lives." Julie paused, gathering courage. "I want them to have you." Henry was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the city skyline. "My whole life I've been successful at everything I've tried: business, investments, philanthropy. But the one thing I wanted most, a family, always felt impossible. Like I was too broken, too damaged by losing my parents to be a good father myself. And now I think maybe being broken is what prepared me to love you all so completely, because I know what it feels like to lose everything. I know how precious this is. I'll never take it for granted." Henry turned to face her fully. "Julie, I want to adopt them. I want to be their father in every sense of the word, but I also want to marry you. I want to make this official, permanent, unshakable." Julie's heart stopped. "Are you proposing to me?" "Not yet," Henry said with a smile. "When I propose, it's going to be perfect and romantic and worthy of the incredible woman you are. This is me asking if you'd be open to the idea when the time comes." "The time comes?" "When you're ready, when the girls are ready, when it feels right for all of us." Henry reached for her hand. I'm not going anywhere, Julie. We have time to do this right. That evening, as they tucked the girls into bed together, Tamara had one more important question. If Mr. Henry becomes our daddy, can we call him Dad instead of Mr. Henry? Henry knelt down beside her bed, his expression tender. I would love nothing more than to be your dad. But remember, you already had a father who gave you life. I could never replace him, and I wouldn't want to. What I want is to be the dad who gets to watch you grow up, who teaches you to drive, who walks you down the aisle someday if you want me to. I don't remember our first father, Jenna said quietly from her own bed. He left before we knew him. But you're here, and you love us, and you make pancakes shaped like dinosaurs. I think that makes you our real dad. Your first father's loss is my greatest gain, Henry said seriously. But I promise you both, I will spend every day of my life making sure you know how valued and loved you are. We know, Tamara said sleepily. You show us all the time. After the girls were asleep, Julie and Henry stood in the doorway of their shared bedroom, watching them sleep peacefully. They're going to want to know about Terence eventually, Julie said quietly. When they're older, they'll have questions about why he left, what kind of man abandons his children. And when that time comes, we'll tell them the truth, in an age-appropriate way, that some people aren't ready to be parents, that his leaving was about his own limitations, not about their worth. Henry slipped his arm around her waist. But we'll also make sure they know that they've always been wanted and loved from the moment they drew their first breath. You really want this, the chaos and the homework battles and the teenage years ahead. Henry turned her to face him, his hands framing her face. Julie, I want every single moment. The 2 a.m. fevers and the first day of school tears and the graduation ceremonies. I want to teach them to drive and to threaten their first boyfriends and to dance with them at their weddings. I want all of it, even when they're sulky teenagers who think we don't understand anything. Especially then, because I'll remember this conversation and I'll know that once upon a time, 2 little girls chose me to be their dad, and that's a responsibility I'll never take lightly. As Julie fell asleep that night, curled against Henry's chest in her small bedroom, she marveled at the unexpected ways life could surprise you. 5 years ago, she'd thought her story was over, that she'd used up her chance at happiness and would spend the rest of her life focused solely on being a good mother. But love, it turned out, had more chapters planned for her story. And this chapter, the one where a broken woman and a lonely billionaire chose each other and built a family out of hope and determination, might just be the most beautiful one yet. In the morning, she would wake up to the sound of Henry making coffee and the girls arguing about whose turn it was to pick the breakfast music. She would watch the man she loved teaching her daughters how to crack eggs without getting shells in the bowl. And she would think about how sometimes the best things in life came not when you were looking for them, but when you were brave enough to believe you deserved them. They were becoming a family, not through blood or legal documents, but through the daily choice to love and cherish and show up for each other. And that, Julie thought, was the most beautiful kind of magic there was. Chapter 8. Ghosts of the Past. Julie was putting the finishing touches on her presentation boards when the bell above her office door chimed. She'd finally been able to rent a small storefront for Torres Designs, thanks to the success of several high-end projects that Henry's connections had helped her secure. The space was modest but professional, with samples of her work displayed on clean white walls and a desk that actually matched the elegant aesthetic she'd worked so hard to create. "I'll be right with you," she called out, not looking up from the color swatches she was organizing for tomorrow's client meeting. "Take your time. I'm enjoying the view." The voice made Julie's blood freeze in her veins. Slowly, she raised her head to find Terence Clayton standing in her office, and for a moment she couldn't breathe. He looked older, his sandy hair thinning, and his face carrying the telltale signs of someone who'd spent too many nights drinking his problems away. But it was his expression that unsettled her most, a mixture of shock, regret, and calculating interest that made her skin crawl. "Hello, Julie. What are you doing here?" Her voice came out steadier than she felt, which was a small miracle considering her hands were shaking. "I was in the neighborhood and saw the sign, Torres Designs. Very impressive." Terrence stepped further into the office, his eyes taking in the elegant furnishings and professional setup. "You've done well for yourself." "I asked what you're doing here, Terrence, in my office, after 6 years. Can't a man visit his ex-wife? Congratulate her on her success?" Terrence moved closer to her desk, and Julie had to fight the urge to back away. "Though I have to say, you look different. Very different." Julie was acutely aware of her appearance, the well-tailored burgundy dress, the professional hairstyle, the confidence that had taken months to build. She looked successful, polished, nothing like the broken woman he'd left in that hospital room. "People change," she said simply. "They certainly do." Terrence's gaze traveled over her appreciatively, making her feel sick. "You're beautiful, Julie. Really beautiful. I barely recognized you." "Get to the point, Terrence. I have work to do." "Right, work. I've been hearing interesting things about you, about your boyfriend." Terrence's tone turned casual, but there was an edge underneath that set Julie's nerves on high alert. "Henry Mills, right? The billionaire?" Julie's heart began to race. "How do you know about Henry?" "Come on, Julie. You're dating one of the richest men in the city. People talk. Word gets around." Terrence sat down in the chair across from her desk without being invited, making himself comfortable. "What I can't figure out is how someone like you ended up with someone like him." "Someone like me? Don't get me wrong, you look incredible now, but Henry Mills could have any woman he wants. Supermodels, actresses, society princesses. Why would he choose a single mother with baggage?" The cruel words hit their mark, stirring up insecurities Julie thought she'd overcome. But she'd grown stronger over the past year, and she refused to let Terrence see her doubt herself. "Maybe because he's a good man who values substance over superficiality," she said evenly. "Or maybe," Terrence said, leaning forward with a smirk, "he doesn't know the whole truth about you, about us, about how you trapped me with a pregnancy I never wanted." "I trapped you." Julie's voice rose despite her efforts to stay calm. "You were my husband, Terrence. We were trying to have a baby." "You were trying. I was going along with it to keep you happy." "Big difference." Terrence shrugged. "But that's water under the bridge now. What matters is the present. The present where you've been absent from your daughters' lives for 6 years." "Our daughters," Terrence corrected, and something in his tone made Julie's stomach clench. "Jenna and Tamara. 6 years old now, right? They must be starting to ask questions about their father." "They have a father. Henry is adopting them." "Is he now?" Terrence's smile turned predatory. "That's going to be complicated. See, I never gave up my parental rights. Legally, I'm still their father." Julie felt the ground shift beneath her feet. "You abandoned them. You walked away. I left you, not them. There's a difference. And now that I'm in a better place financially," Terrence gestured around the office, "well, I think it's time I got to know my daughters." "You're not in a better place financially," Julie said sharply. "You're here because you found out about Henry's money and think you can cash in somehow." Terrence's mask slipped for just a moment, revealing the desperation underneath. "Times have been tough, Jules. The real estate market crashed and I made some bad investments. A man's got to do what he's got to do to survive." "And what exactly do you think you're going to do?" "I'm thinking about seeking joint custody." Maybe even primary custody, considering how much you're working now. Courts don't like it when mothers prioritize careers over children. Terrence's voice turned silky with implied threat. Of course, if we could work out some kind of arrangement, maybe that wouldn't be necessary. You want money. I want what's fair. Henry Mills has more money than God, and those are my daughters he's playing daddy to. Shouldn't their real father benefit from that relationship too? Julie stood up so quickly her chair rolled backward. Get out. Julie, get out of my office right now or I'm calling the police. Terrence raised his hands in mock surrender. No need to get upset. I'm just trying to have a conversation here. But you should think about what I said, about the custody thing. Courts might be very interested to know that you're letting a stranger adopt my children without my consent. Henry is not a stranger. He's the man who loves them, who takes care of them, who's been there for every important moment of their lives for the past year. And I'm sure that's a heartwarming story, Terrence said, standing and straightening his cheap suit jacket. But blood is blood, Julie. I'm their biological father, and that counts for something in the eyes of the law. As he headed toward the door, he paused and looked back at her. You know, if things had been different between us, maybe I would have tried harder. You really have become quite the catch. The moment the door closed behind him, Julie collapsed into her chair, her entire body shaking. 6 years, 6 years of building a life without him, of healing from his cruelty, of believing he was gone forever. And now he was back, threatening everything she'd worked for, everything she loved. Her phone was in her hand before she consciously decided to call Henry. He answered on the first ring. Hey, beautiful. How's your day going? Henry. Her voice cracked and she could hear him shift into protective mode immediately. What's wrong? Are you hurt? Are the girls okay? The girls are fine, they're at school. But Henry, Terrence was here, at my office. He knows about you, about us, and he's talking about custody and… Julie broke off, overwhelmed. I'm coming to get you right now. Don't leave your office, don't talk to anyone else about this, and don't panic. We'll figure this out together. He wants money, Henry. He thinks he can extort us because you're wealthy and he has parental rights. Over my dead body, Henry said, his voice hard with protective fury. I'll be there in 10 minutes. True to his word, Henry walked through her office door exactly 10 minutes later, his face grim but his presence immediately comforting. Julie flew into his arms and he held her tight against his chest while she tried not to fall apart. Tell me everything, he said quietly. Every word he said, every threat he made. Julie recounted the conversation while Henry listened with growing anger, his jaw clenching when she repeated Terrence's comments about her appearance and his implications about custody. He can't take them, Julie whispered against his chest. Henry, he can't. They don't even know him. It would destroy them. He's not taking anyone anywhere, Henry said firmly. We're going to call my lawyer right now and find out exactly what our options are. And Julie? He pulled back to look at her seriously. He's right about one thing. Blood does count for something in family court, but so does abandonment and so does the best interests of the children. What if it's not enough? What if the fact that he's their biological father gives him rights even though he's been absent? Then we'll fight. With every resource I have, with the best lawyers money can buy, with documentation of every moment he's missed in their lives. Henry cupped her face gently. Julie, I meant what I said about choosing you all every day. That includes protecting you from anyone who tries to hurt our family. Our family, Julie repeated, finding strength in the words. Our family, Henry confirmed. Terrence Clayton gave up his right to call those girls his daughters the day he walked out. Now he's going to learn that some things can't be bought, stolen, or manipulated. And one of those things is the love we've built together. As Henry called his lawyer and began making arrangements for an emergency consultation, Julie looked around her office, this space she'd built with her own hands, this symbol of everything she'd accomplished since Terrence had tried to destroy her. He thought he could waltz back into her life and threaten everything she'd built, but he was wrong. She wasn't the broken woman he'd left in that hospital room anymore. She was stronger, braver, and she had something worth fighting for. She had a family to protect, and she wasn't going to let anyone, not even the man who'd fathered her children, tear it apart. The war had begun, but Julie wasn't planning to surrender. Chapter 9. The Proposal and the Plan. 3 weeks had passed since Terrence's unwelcome return, and those weeks had been filled with lawyer meetings, strategy sessions, and careful documentation of every interaction with the girl's biological father. Henry's legal team was thorough and optimistic, but they'd been clear about one thing. Biological fathers had rights, even ones who'd been absent for years. Julie tried to push the legal worries aside as she packed the girls' suitcases for what Henry had promised would be a special weekend adventure. He'd been mysterious about their destination, only telling her to pack comfortable clothes and swimsuits for all three of them. "Mama, where are we going?" Tamara asked for the 100th time, bouncing on her bed while Julie folded her favorite purple dress. "I told you, sweetheart, it's a surprise from Henry, Dad." The name had stuck after their conversation months ago, and hearing it always made Julie's heart warm. "Is it somewhere with animals?" Jenna asked hopefully. She'd been obsessed with marine biology lately, checking out library books about dolphins and whales. "You'll have to wait and see, baby girl." The drive was 2 hours through winding mountain roads that led to a stunning lake house nestled among towering pines. The girls pressed their faces to the windows in awe as Henry pulled into the circular driveway. "Henry, Dad, this place is huge," Tamara gasped. "It's beautiful," Jenna said quietly, her artist's eye taking in the stone and timber architecture that seemed to grow naturally from the mountainside. "Welcome to Lake Serenity," Henry said, getting out to help with their bags. "This is my family's old place. My parents brought me here every summer when I was little." Julie could hear the emotion in his voice and reached for his hand. She knew how much this place meant to him. It was where his happiest childhood memories lived, before the accident that had changed everything. The house was magnificent but cozy, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the crystal-clear lake and a stone fireplace that dominated the main living area. The girls ran from room to room, their excited voices echoing through the space. "There's a loft," Jenna called down from upstairs, "with bunk beds." "And look, Mama!" Tamara appeared in the kitchen doorway. "There's a hot tub on the deck." "After dinner," Julie promised. "But first, let's get settled in." The afternoon was perfect. They took the small motorboat out on the lake, where Henry taught the girls to drive while Julie took pictures of their concentrated faces as they gripped the steering wheel. They had a picnic lunch on a secluded beach where Jenna collected interesting rocks and Tamara built elaborate sand castles. During lunch, Henry seemed nervous, checking his phone repeatedly and fidgeting with something in his jacket pocket. Julie noticed but didn't comment, assuming it was work-related stress from the ongoing legal situation with Terrence. "Henry, Dad, are you okay?" Jenna asked with her characteristic perceptiveness. "You seem worried about something." "I'm not worried, sweetheart," Henry said, his smile genuine despite his nerves. "I'm just excited about tonight." "What's tonight?" Tamara demanded, her eyes lighting up with anticipation. "You'll see," Henry said mysteriously. "But first, how about we explore the forest trail? I used to build forts back there when I was your age." The afternoon adventure included hiking through pine-scented trails, where Henry showed them the remains of childhood tree forts and told them stories about growing up visiting this magical place. The girls were enchanted, collecting pine cones and interesting leaves, while Julie marveled at this glimpse into Henry's past. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, Henry suggested they take the boat out one more time to watch the sunset from the water. "This is the most beautiful place in the world," Julie said, leaning against Henry's shoulder as they floated in the middle of the lake. The girls were trailing their hands in the water, mesmerized by the way the setting sun made everything glow. "It is now," Henry said quietly, and something in his voice made Julie look up at him. "Henry, Dad," Jenna said suddenly, "look at all the stars." The sky had darkened while they weren't paying attention, and now thousands of stars glittered overhead like diamonds scattered on black velvet. "I've never seen so many stars," Tamara breathed in wonder. "That's because there are no city lights out here," Henry explained. "Just us and the stars and all that space to dream." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small velvet box, and Julie's heart stopped beating entirely. "Speaking of dreams," Henry said, his voice shaking slightly with emotion, "I have something I want to ask all three of you." Both girls turned to look at him with wide eyes, while Julie found herself unable to breathe. "Julie Torres," Henry said, turning to face her fully, "you and your daughters changed my life completely. Before you, I was successful but empty. I had everything money could buy, but nothing that really mattered. You taught me what love looks like, what family feels like, what it means to have a purpose beyond making money." "Henry," Julie whispered, tears already streaming down her face. "Jenna and Tamara," Henry continued, including the girls in his proposal, "you two made me understand what it means to be a dad. You taught me about bedtime stories and scraped knees and the pure joy of watching someone you love discover the world. You chose me to be your father, and that's the greatest honor of my life." He opened the velvet box to reveal a stunning ring, not ostentatious or flashy, but elegant and timeless, with a center diamond surrounded by smaller stones that caught the starlight like captured stars. "Julie, will you marry me? Will you let me be your husband and their father for the rest of our lives? Will you make this family official and unbreakable?" Through her tears, Julie saw that both girls were crying too, their faces shining with happiness and excitement. "Yes," she whispered, then louder, "Yes, Henry. Yes to all of it. Yes, forever." Henry slipped the ring onto her finger with shaking hands, and then both girls were throwing themselves into their arms, all four of them crying and laughing and holding each other tight under the vast canopy of stars. "Are we going to have a big wedding?" Tamara asked when they'd all calmed down enough to speak. "What kind of wedding do you want?" Henry asked, always making sure the girls felt included in major decisions. "One with dancing," Tamara declared without hesitation. "And flowers," Jenna added thoughtfully. "Lots and lots of flowers. And maybe butterflies." "And cake," Julie said, kissing Henry's cheek. "Definitely cake." "Then we'll have dancing and flowers and butterflies and cake," Henry promised. "The most beautiful wedding ever, because we're celebrating the most beautiful family." Later that night, after the girls had fallen asleep in the loft bedroom, exhausted from excitement and fresh mountain air, Julie and Henry sat on the deck overlooking the lake, wrapped in a soft blanket and sharing a bottle of champagne. "I can't believe this is real," Julie said, looking down at her ring as it caught the moonlight. "A year ago, I was terrified of letting you into our lives, and now you're stuck with me forever," Henry finished with a grin. "I love being stuck with you." Julie curled against his side, feeling more content than she'd ever thought possible. "But Henry, we need to talk about Terrence, about what this engagement means for the custody situation." Henry's expression grew serious. "I've been thinking about that too. Getting married strengthens our case significantly. It shows stability, commitment, a genuine two-parent household. But I think we need to be prepared for him to escalate things when he finds out. Do you think he'll really try to take them to court? I think he'll try to scare us into paying him off first. Men like Terrence are usually cowards at heart. They prefer the easy money to an actual fight. Henry stroked her hair gently. But if he does take us to court, we'll be ready. What if the judge decides that biological connection matters more than everything else? Then we'll appeal. We'll fight it at every level until we find a judge who understands that being a father is about love and commitment, not DNA. Henry's voice was fierce with determination. Julie, I'm not losing you or the girls. Not to Terrence, not to anyone. Julie was quiet for a moment, an idea forming in her mind. What if we don't wait for him to make the first move? What do you mean? I mean, what if we take control of the situation? What if we announce our engagement publicly, make it clear that this family is united and strong and not going to be intimidated? Henry sat up straighter, intrigued. Go on. You're Henry Mills. You have influence, connections, a reputation in this city. What if we used that? Not to hurt Terrence, but to protect our family. Make it clear that we're not hiding, we're not ashamed, and we're not going to be extorted. You're thinking about the foundation gala next month, Henry said slowly. The one where all the major donors and city officials will be present. I'm thinking about making a statement, about showing the world that we're a family, that the girls are loved and protected, and that anyone who tries to threaten that is going to face consequences. Henry smiled, and Julie could see the businessman in him appreciating the strategy. You want to make it too expensive for him to continue harassing us. Not financially expensive, but socially and professionally expensive. Exactly. Make it clear that if he pursues this custody case, he'll be going up against not just us, but everyone who matters in this city. Make him understand that he's not just threatening a single mother anymore. He's threatening the family of Henry Mills. And if that doesn't work? Julie's expression hardened with a determination that would have surprised the broken woman Terrence had left in that hospital room. Then we make sure the whole world knows exactly what kind of man Terrence Clayton really is. We document every threat, every manipulation, every moment of abandonment. We make sure that if this goes to court, the judge sees him for who he really is. Henry leaned over and kissed her deeply. Have I mentioned that I love your brilliant, strategic mind almost as much as I love your beautiful heart? Show me, Julie murmured against his lips. As they sat under the stars planning their future and their defense of it, Julie felt a fierce protectiveness rise in her chest. Terrence had made a crucial mistake when he'd decided to threaten her family. He was still thinking of her as the vulnerable woman he'd left behind, but that woman was gone. In her place was someone stronger, smarter, and completely unwilling to let anyone hurt the people she loved. The battle was coming, but Julie was ready for it. And this time she wasn't fighting alone. She had Henry, she had her daughters, and she had something worth fighting for. Most importantly, she finally understood her own worth, and that was a power Terrence could never take away from her again. The proposal had been perfect, but the real victory would come when she showed the world exactly who Julie Torres had become. Chapter 10. Sweet Justice. The grand ballroom of the Riverside Hotel had been transformed into an elegant showcase for the annual Children's Hope Foundation Gala, the same venue where Julie had first met Henry 2.5 years ago as a struggling server in a borrowed uniform. Tonight she stood in the same space as Henry Mills' fiancée, wearing a stunning midnight blue gown that made her look like royalty, her engagement ring catching the crystal chandelier light as she mingled with the city's elite. The irony wasn't lost on her that this was also where she would finally deal with Terrence Clayton once and for all. You look incredible, Henry murmured in her ear as they moved through the crowd of donors, politicians, and business leaders. Are you ready for this? I've been ready for 6 years, Julie replied, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. They'd planned this evening carefully. The guest list included the mayor, 3 family court judges, the district attorney, and most of the city's prominent attorneys. By the end of the night, everyone who mattered would know exactly what kind of man Terrence Clayton was, and his threats against their family would become social and professional suicide. Julie had spent the past month documenting everything, every threatening phone call, every veiled extortion attempt, every moment of the past 6 years when Terrence had been absent from his daughters' lives. She had recordings, witness statements, and a legal team that had prepared for every possible scenario. The transformation was complete. The woman who had once served wine to these very people was now their equal, respected and admired for her successful design business and her engagement to one of the city's most prominent philanthropists. But more than that, she had found her voice, her strength, and her worth. Julie spotted him the moment he entered the ballroom, looking uncomfortable in an ill-fitting tuxedo that had clearly been rented for the occasion. He'd somehow managed to secure an invitation, probably through one of his desperate business connections, and was scanning the crowd with the calculating expression she remembered too well. When his eyes found her, Julie saw the exact moment recognition hit. His mouth fell open as he took in her transformation. The elegant gown, the confident posture, the radiant happiness that seemed to glow from within. This wasn't the broken woman he'd left behind. This was someone entirely new, someone he'd never had the power to touch. "Showtime," she whispered to Henry, who squeezed her hand supportively. Julie had timed her moment perfectly. The evening's program was about to begin, with Henry scheduled to give the keynote address about the Foundation's work supporting single-parent families. As the crowd began to settle into their seats, Terrence made his move, approaching their table with the swagger of a man who thought he held all the cards. "Julie," he said loudly enough for nearby tables to hear, "don't you look lovely tonight? And Henry Mills, what an honor to finally meet the man who's been playing house with my family." Several heads turned their direction, and Julie saw Henry tense beside her. But this was her fight, her moment to take control of the narrative that had defined her life for too long. "Terrence," she said calmly, rising from her seat with graceful composure. "What a surprise to see you here. I wasn't aware you'd developed an interest in children's welfare." "Oh, I've always cared about children's welfare," Terrence replied with a smirk, "especially when it comes to my own daughters. Speaking of which, we really should discuss that custody arrangement we talked about." The conversations at nearby tables had stopped entirely now, all attention focused on the unfolding drama. Julie could see Judge Patricia Williams at the table to her left, District Attorney Robert Chen to her right, and Mayor Sarah Johnson directly behind Terrence. "Perfect. Custody arrangement," Julie repeated, her voice carrying clearly through the suddenly quiet section of the ballroom. "I'm sorry, could you refresh my memory? Are you referring to the legal custody you voluntarily abandoned 6 years ago when you walked out on your newborn daughters?" Terrence's confident expression faltered slightly. "That's not how it happened." "No, you're absolutely right," Julie interrupted, her voice growing stronger. "Let me tell everyone exactly how it happened." She turned slightly, addressing the growing audience of influential listeners. 6 years ago, this man served me with divorce papers on the day I gave birth to twin daughters, after telling me, and I quote, that I was ugly and that no one could ever love someone like me. A collective gasp rose from the surrounding tables. Julie saw Judge Williams lean forward with sharp interest, her expression growing thunderous. "Julie, that's not—" Terrence started, but she wasn't finished. "He abandoned 2 newborn babies and their mother in a hospital room because, in his words, he wasn't going to waste his life tied down to someone who looked like me, dealing with crying babies and dirty diapers." Julie's voice never wavered, each word falling like a stone into still water. "For 6 years he contributed nothing, no child support, no birthday cards, no Christmas presents. Nothing." The silence in their section of the ballroom was deafening. Julie could see Terrence beginning to sweat, finally realizing he'd walked into a carefully orchestrated trap. And now, Julie continued, her voice rising with righteous anger, now that he's discovered I'm engaged to a successful man, suddenly he's interested in being a father. Not because he loves his daughters, he's never even asked their names tonight, but because he thinks he can extort money from our family. That's not true, Terence protested, but his voice lacked conviction. Isn't it? Julie reached into her evening purse and pulled out her phone. Because I have recordings of every conversation we've had since you reappeared in our lives, including the one where you explicitly threatened to seek custody unless we paid you what you called your fair share of Henry's wealth. District Attorney Chen was now standing, his expression severe. Mr. Clayton, is it? I think we should have a conversation. This is harassment, Terence said desperately, looking around at the circle of hostile faces. I'm just trying to reconnect with my children. Your children? Henry stood slowly, his presence commanding and intimidating. Let me tell you about your children, Terence. Jenna loves marine biology and asks thoughtful questions about everything. She's gentle and wise and worries about other people's feelings. Tamara wants to be a dancer and a veterinarian and the president, probably all at the same time. She believes in magic and fairness and that everyone deserves to be loved. Henry's voice grew colder with each word. They've never asked about you, not once, because they have a father, me. I'm the one who reads them bedtime stories and helps with homework and holds them when they're scared. I'm the one who will walk them down the aisle someday and teach them how to drive and love them unconditionally for the rest of their lives. You can't just steal my children, Terence shouted, his desperation finally showing. He didn't steal anything, Julie said firmly. You threw them away. You threw us all away because you thought we weren't worth keeping. Well, guess what, Terence? You were wrong about everything. She gestured to Henry, to the elegant ballroom, to the life she'd built from the ashes of his cruelty. I am worth loving. I am worth cherishing. I am worth fighting for. And those beautiful little girls you abandoned? They're worth everything to the man who chose to be their real father. Judge Williams approached their table, her expression stern. Mr. Clayton, I've been presiding over family court for 15 years, and I've seen men like you before. Men who abandon their responsibilities and then return when there's money to be made. You can't all be against me, Terence said wildly. I have rights, biological rights. You have the rights you didn't abandon, Judge Williams corrected coldly. And based on what I've heard tonight, that's precious little. I suggest you speak with your attorney about the legal definition of abandonment and what it means for parental rights. Mayor Johnson stepped forward next. Mr. Clayton, I'm going to make this very simple for you. Henry Mills and Julie Torres are valued members of our community. They contribute to this city's welfare and prosperity. You, on the other hand, are a man who abandoned his children and is now attempting extortion. If you continue to harass this family, you'll find that this city has very little tolerance for your behavior. The crowd had grown around them, and Julie could see phones being discreetly held up, recording every moment. By tomorrow, Terrence's humiliation would be the talk of every social circle in the city. His reputation would be destroyed, his business prospects ruined, and any sympathy he might have garnered as a father seeking his children would be obliterated. This isn't over, Terrence said weakly, but everyone could see it absolutely was. Actually, it is, Henry said, pulling out an official-looking document. These are cease and desist orders signed by 3 different judges. If you contact Julie, approach our children, or attempt any legal action based on tonight's threats, you'll face criminal charges for harassment, attempted extortion, and violation of a restraining order. Additionally, District Attorney Chen added, we'll be reviewing the recordings Mrs. Torres mentioned for possible criminal charges related to your extortion attempts. Terence looked around the circle of hostile faces, judges, lawyers, politicians, and business leaders who could destroy his reputation with a single conversation. The fight went out of him all at once, his shoulders sagging in defeat. "You think you've won," he said to Julie, but his voice lacked any real venom. "You think this changes anything?" "I don't think I've won, Terence," Julie replied with quiet dignity. "I know I have, because 6 years ago you told me no one could ever love someone like me. And you were wrong. Henry loves me. My daughters love me. I love myself. And that love has built something beautiful and strong and unshakable." She stepped closer to him, her voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carried more power than her earlier declarations. "You tried to break me, but all you did was teach me how strong I really am. You thought you were taking everything away from me, but you actually set me free to find something better. So thank you, Terence. Thank you for leaving, because if you hadn't, I never would have found my real family." Security arrived then, quietly escorted by Henry's assistant, and Terence was led from the ballroom without further incident. The crowd slowly dispersed, returning to their tables and their evening, but not before dozens of people approached Julie and Henry to offer their support and congratulations. As the formal program began and Henry took the stage to deliver his keynote address about supporting families in crisis, Julie sat in the front row and felt a profound sense of closure wash over her. The woman who had been destroyed in a hospital room 6 years ago was truly gone, replaced by someone stronger, braver, and infinitely more valuable. When Henry finished his speech to thunderous applause and returned to her side, Julie reached for his hand and smiled through happy tears. "How do you feel?" he asked quietly. "Free," she whispered. "Finally, completely free." And as they danced together later that evening, surrounded by friends and family and the promise of their beautiful future, Julie knew that sometimes the best revenge wasn't about destroying someone else. It was about building something so beautiful and strong that no one could ever tear it down. She had won not by becoming like Terence, but by becoming everything he said she could never be. And that, she thought as Henry spun her around the dance floor, was the sweetest victory of all. The broken woman who had believed she was worthless was gone forever. In her place stood Julie Torres Mills, successful businesswoman, beloved mother, cherished wife-to-be, and a woman who finally knew her own incredible worth.